Good morning. I'm going to give you a quick demonstration of how to work with hosted lights and hosted light fixtures inside of a Revit model. This is Revit 2020, but it actually applies to all versions, anything that has a hosted light. So the way a hosted element works is it has to have a surface to actually be placed with in most cases, but that surface can be anything. It can be a wall, it can be a ceiling. When you're using a linked architectural background, it really needs to be effaced. You don't want to use wall and ceiling based light fixtures if you don't actually have those physical objects in your model. So I'm going to show you real quick how to place a couple of hosted lights. So I'm going to come down here to light fixtures, and I'm going to start off with this plain recessed lights fixture. Now here's a real quick way to know if it's hosted. Just right click on it and click edit. And when you open the light fixture up, it has this surface in it. So when you pick that, it actually tells you it's a face. It actually tells you what that surface is. But this is a face base, which means it can be placed on any surface in here. You notice how the light is pointing up. Well, it's looking for that downward facing side of the ceiling. So we're going to take a look at this in a 3D view in a minute so you know how that works. So let's get out of the family here. We're going to start by just dropping a 2x4 light fixture in. Again, it's looking for the surface, but you can't just go in here and start clicking. You have to look at what we call the three stooges up here at the top. Place on vertical face means that you have to place it on a wall or any kind of a vertical surface. Place on face means that you can place it on any surface, so it doesn't matter. And that's most of what you're going to do when you have a linked architectural model. If you don't have a face to work on, like I just need to place something at an elevation, I can use a level to do this. We'll do that last, or I can create a work plane, a reference plane inside the model. But either way, I got to have something to place this object on. It's either a vertical face, or a work plane. So I'm going to tell it to place it on a face. And notice now that I can actually place the light fixture here. Just start dropping that around through my rooms. And I can actually see how this guy is getting placed. So it's snapping to the grids, but it's actually hosted to that face. And if the face moves up and down, then the light will move up and down. So if we look at this from a 3D view, you can see how these are recessed lights and they're up inside of that ceiling. So for any reason, if the ceiling moves up or down, let's say we change it to 9 feet, because it's a hosted element, the lights go with it. But what if I want to place something that's not hosted? Well, if I want to place something that's inside to a reference plane. What I want to do in this case is I'm going to come down to an elevation view or my section view that I have defined. So let's go into sections and let's look at this section. Now that I'm in section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a different level in here. Sorry, clicking a little bit too fast. Architecture, level. And I'm going to change the level type now, saying that this is no head because I'm going to use this as a reference plane in here. So I'm going to draw a level through here. And now when I want to place a light fixture, see how it automatically created a view for me? I can actually go to level 4 to that view. You won't see the walls in this case because they're not associated with it, but you can see that it does create that floor plan. It all depends on where it is. So let's say that I want to work within a specific level. I can actually set and show reference plane. So if I pick set, I can say what plane I want to work with, level 4. And when I do that, now I can click show to actually see a grid that represents that reference plane. If it's not visible, don't worry about it. So now when I go to place the light, if I go in and say, okay, I'm going to come back here to the light fixture, pick my 2x4 120 and drag it in, I have to say pick work plane. And when I do this now, it's going to give me options. And notice how because I set that work plane level 4 current, then it's going to allow me to place it. So I'm not necessarily going to see it in this view. Let's just go ahead and drop a couple of them out here just so you can see how that works. So now that I've got them done, I can go back and look at my level 4 floor plan. I can start to see where these lights are. Go to my 3D view, sorry. Crank this thing up and around. Yeah, see how that light is now placed there? It's placed relative to that plane. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is notice how in this case, this light is upside down relative to the other lights. If I go back and look at it, you'll see there's the one that's associated with level 4, but that one is actually pointing down. And this is the problem with working with a level, is that the light is going to be automatically upside down because Revit recognizes the ceiling face as pointing down, so it does make the light recessed. But in this case, The plane is actually looking up in that case. So to fix this, you actually have to pick the light fixture and then use the flip grip to flip him upside down so that he's now sitting correctly on that plane. So those are just a couple real real quick tips for how to work with that. Again, you don't have to do this with you don't have to do this with ceiling grids. You can actually, when you're placing lights along with the ceiling grid, you can use a reference point. You can do the same thing and say, hey, I want to do this as 2 by 4 120, and actually place on work plane. It's going to give me the same behavior. But now if I look at it, see how my elevation's it's going to be a little bit different. So if I say, okay, place on whatever work plane it is, level 1, and I drop that in, the reason why it's not visible is because the light is actually sitting on that work plane. Its offset level is 0. So if I set it up to 9 feet where the light is now, offset from host, now I'm going to start seeing that light. So these are kind of a complicated ways to do things, but this is how it works. And the key about this is that what we do is we typically use non-hosted lights. We'll make the light and make it non-hosted just so we don't have to deal with trying to find and locate work planes. But you can use either a work plane or a face to place a light. Again, there's our light that we flipped upside down. We come back to our 3D view, you can see all the lights that are in there. There's the one that's sitting down on the ground because we didn't say how tall it needed to be. When you associate with a level, you have to tell it how far it is above that host. 7 feet, 8 feet, whatever you're setting for it, and it will move it up and down. Now, one last note about this. When you are in an elevation view, let's say I go to my south elevation, I'm looking at the building. Let's make this transparent so we can actually see through it. We go find detail and wireframe. So you see all the lights. If I move a level at any time, those lights are going to go with them. So if I come back and I change that to 5 feet, see how the lights stay with it? Because they're associated. This light right here, its host is level 1. So it, even though it's not physically associated with the surface, if I go and I change this elevation to something else, let's say that I make this like -2 feet, then you'll see the whole thing pull down, not just that light, but also the ceiling, which is associated with level 1, and the lights that are associated with the ceiling. They're all hosted. So hopefully this kind of explains a little bit about how this works. If you run into any more problems, just let me know. Thanks.